Hello and welcome everyone to the fourth edition of Ananke's Women in Literature Festival. It is my absolute honor to welcome three amazing trailblazers, Readomania authors, Deepti Menon, Mona Verma, and Smita Das Jain. So welcome everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabin. Really glad to be here.
I'm so glad, we're doing this session and focusing on short story writing, especially by women in South Asia. Mona has just logged off. She'll come again. So what we can do is we can begin with Dipti, you telling us about yourself and about your work. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Sabin. So happy to be here. And in fact, I think this is my second time with you. And I always feel at home when I'm with Ananke. As a writer, yes, I began writing when I was 10 years old. I think I wrote my first poem when I was 10. And then I don't think I ever looked back because for me, writing is like breathing. Even if I don't get published, I just want to write and write and write. I think that is one thing that I've been blessed with. And basically, I'm an army kid. I turned into an army wife. So the very first book that I wrote was called Arms and the Woman, which was a light-hearted look at my life in the army as a lady wife. At that time you say lady wife, okay, all wives are ladies, aren't they? Things have changed today, of course, but as a lady wife, and it was called Arms and the Woman, and this was way back in 2002, which shows how ancient I am. And I carried on writing.
No, you're not. Absolutely not.
Thank you. I was waiting for that. Thank you. And of course, I started writing short stories for magazines when I was in college, and wrote my first book in 2002, and then I kept writing. And it was in 2016 that I met Dipankar Mukherjee of Readomania fame, and I wrote Shadow in the Mirror. And that is where I think my writing career really took off. I had been writing short stories, getting, myself in a number of anthologies and all that. But I think novel writing started when I wrote Shadow in the Mirror. And after that, I did not intend to write any more shadowy books, but I'm right now on book number 4 in 2024, and they're all shadowy and they're all gray. And when people look at me, they say, is she really capable of writing such gory, gray stuff? And I say, yes, of course. My husband sleeps with one eye open because he never knows what I'm up to. So writing it's like I said, a breath, my life breath. And I've written a number of books in different genres, but my absolute favorite is writing thrillers and thriller short stories. So I think that kind of sums up my literary journey. It's because I don't want to delve on every book that I've written, but yes, I think writing thriller short stories is what I'm most comfortable with.
Wow, that's amazing. And writing thrillers is, another, it's. I feel it's so much fun. There's so much mystery and anticipation, right?
Yes, absolutely. I love thrillers.
Great. Mona, would you like to go next? You're on the mute.
Sorry. Am I reaching now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So thank you, Sabin. Thank you, Ananke Lit Fest. Thank you for having me, first of all, and also sharing the desk with the very lovely Deepti and Smita, erudite authors. Thank you very much. So yes, I'm Mona Verma, and well, I'm pretty ancient myself, and I'm based out of Haridwar. I have written 9 books and have contributed to in about 12 anthologies so far. I work as an executive presence coach and an organizational skills facilitator at Disha. And reading and writing is the sphere in which I'm actually in my element. I started writing in 2007, and my first book came out in 2009. And this first book that I had, it was called The Big Bridge to Nowhere. The book was released by Ruskin Bond. And that was one book that he had released after almost a gap of 17 to 18 years. So that instance was something that really egged me on. And he told me that your best is yet to come. Incidentally, this book had 4 short stories. And these short stories were very much on the lines of, I'm pretty unashamed when I'm professing this, were on the lines of, what we'd read in school. O. Henry, Somerset Maugham, Premchand, and whatnot. So not really spin-offs, but of course, totally my imagination, but somehow on the same lines, because we enjoyed reading those stories. So I personally at that point thought that everybody else is going to enjoy reading those. Well, the book did fairly well, not really very well. It was my first book. But Ruskin's words, his words of encouragement, they really egged me on. And I took his words very seriously when he told me your best is yet to come. So I thought also I was the next best thing on this planet after the invention of fire and wheel. And the kind of books that I could write, nobody else could, because Ruskin said so. So my second book was something, the second book was something which was my book. My first book was an effort, an endeavor to prove to myself that I could write, to put something out into the world so people accept me as a writer. So it was basically a trial with myself. My second book was the book which actually turned me into a writer. It was called God is a River, A Story of Faith. And this book was based on the Indo-Pak partition. I was brought up by my grandparents in Haridwar, and they had basically traversed this entire boundary from Gujranwala district of Pakistan to Uttar Pradesh at that time. There was no Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh at that time. And as a child, my grandparents had brought me up, and as a child, I grew up listening to the stories that they would tell me. So no matter where a story started from, the stories would always end in my grandfather's village in Bhakad Mandi in Gujranwala district of Pakistan. Because his heart was there, his roots were there, even though he had migrated to Hindustan at that time. To him, his country was always Pakistan. His place was always that Gujranwala district. So he would tell me all those stories, and I was always intrigued. I always knew that one day I'm going to write a story on partition. And that is where God is a River came in. And till date, even despite 9 books and almost a dozen anthologies, God is a River is a book that is closest to my heart. Because they were real life stories. They were real life stories that I'd strung together into a book. And then came The White Shadow, which was based on the child widows of Banaras. The second edition of The White Shadow was basically introduced by and released by Readomania to the world in the form of Lost and Found in Banaras. So it was based on the child widows of Banaras, the law of karma, and so many things that Kashi is all about, innumerable things that Kashi is all about. The fourth was The Clown of Whitefields and Other Stories, which had 7 stories for children, but stories from the entire world put together, because I believe a child's heart remains the same. It's so untarnished, unadulterated, full of dreams, a heart that believes in mystery, in magic, in the impossible. So there were those 7 stories. Children loved those stories, and I loved writing them as well. Then came Lost and Found in Banaras, which was a second edition of The White Shadow. Then came COVID. And during COVID, we have this wonderful man called Dipankar Mukherjee, which I guess all of you know about him. He would let us, rust in peace, even during COVID. So every third day, he would call us, all of us, and say, "Kya kar rahe ho?" And we'd say, no nothing, reading, using this time to read. No, use this time to write as well. So who's going to print our books? And nobody is going to print your books, but I'm going to publish your books. So those books are going to be e-books or online books, but keep writing. And I think, that was such a wonderful push for all of us. The millions of anthologies that came out, Deepti and Smita, all of us, we know about those.
Oh, yes.
So did about 5 anthologies during that time and 2 ebooks, You versus Yours, which was basically a tryst between a person and an object in their house, the conversation between people and objects. And then came Laughter Lines because there was this dire need of humor at a time when all of us were completely devastated by this disease that had ravaged the entire planet. So I wrote Laughter Lines. And after that, and then I had 2 children in the house, a 27-year-old, sorry, at that time, a 25-year-old and a 22-year-old who were desperate to tear each other's hair out during that time. So I thought, why not put their energies to good use, and told them, let's do some research on the Puranas, which was also Dipankar's idea. And I was dead against it. But yes, I'm so glad that, finally I accepted that and we did this book. And I wrote this book with my daughter, Sanjana Verma. It was called Deva Sutras, and it had 24 stories from the 18 Mahapuranas. Because what would happen, I would go to their room, scream at them. They would never even, look up at me. But the moment I would come up to my office and punch one key, and it's a raging thunderstorm outside, I would punch one key on my laptop and my children could know that mom is working. And they would come and say, what's there for dinner? What is the fancy thing we're cooking tonight? So I thought, let's put those energies to good use and use my son's acumen into making the covers that we did, and my daughter's acumen into the research, the kind of research that the Deva Sutras required. And after that, it was The Scent of Himalayas, the book that has come out this year. And this book has 20 stories from the entire Himalayan belt, right from Jammu and Kashmir to Arunachal Pradesh. The book has just come out, and we are looking at the second print run for both the Deva Sutras as well as the Scent of Himalayas soon. So that's about me.
Smita, it's over to you.
Thank you, Sabin. And I am really glad to be there in the Ananke Literature Festival. This is my second time around. And I am grateful to you, Sabin, for inviting me here again and be a part of this erudite panel. So about me, I am Smita, and if there is one sentence that can describe me, it is that I am a writer by passion. I write something every day, and it's as natural for me as if I'm sleeping or brushing my teeth or breathing. It is like I'm that habituated. I started writing from a very young age. I think I must be 7 or 8 when I ghostwrited an article on a magazine for my brother, and he became an overnight sensation in his school for 3 4 days. And that is when I realized, okay, I can write well. Since then, I have been writing on and off, on and off, and then I went to my college. I was even an editor of my school magazine and then college magazine. And then I went to do my MBA, and the creative writing part was substituted with the technical writing part, all those presentations and report, and this the creative side of me got hidden. And then 3 years ago, when I was contemplating a career pivot, it came back to me all over again that, oh, once upon a time, I used to write and I used to enjoy writing. And of course, fortunately, I was still reading and reading very profusely. And then I rekindled this affair with writing, so as to speak. So since April 2021 is when I took to writing regularly. I love writing in all its form and all formats. So I write fiction, novels, short stories. I write non-fiction, articles, personal stories, blog posts. In terms of my author repertoire, so far I'm an author of 3 books. My first book, Slice of Life, Every Person Has a Story, came out in 2021. It was a shorts, a collection of 18 slice of life stories, as the name says, where I looked at like what is apparent to everyone, what is happening in front of you may not necessarily be what is actually happening beneath the surface. So every person has a story. One may think that a person is very successful, or one may think a person is looking very morose and sad, but you never know what is going on, behind the scenes, what the person is going through and what is the reason. And those stories, like much like Mona, the first book for me also was an endeavor to see, okay, I enjoy writing, but am I actually a good writer? That means would the audience love to read my writing? And fortunately, I got great reviews. The book also won an award. So Writefluence awarded the book amongst the top 3 fiction works for that year. And then I realized, okay, this is for keeps. This is something I love. And this is something that readers, my stories are something that readers are also loving to read. And then I went ahead with it full fledged. My second book came out in 2022. That was a novel, A Price to Love, brought out by Readomania. Uh, it was a very different story in terms of a contemporary setting in the corporate world, where there were 4 protagonists, but all the protagonists were antagonists, as in everyone had some gray matter, centered around a woman character who was very difficult to understand. Like till date, even people, and that book went on to a second print run, so it was accepted very well by the readers. But till date, I may, when readers talk to me about that book, they are like, I can't decide whether I love your female character or whether I hate your female protagonist. It is like a very complicated character. Under the garb, under the screen of entertainment, I would say the book gave out the message of self-love, about how if you don't love yourself, it is futile to find go and search for love elsewhere, because you will never get it. And then last year, Twisted Tales and Turns. So here's the book. This is my latest fiction book, Twisted Tales and Turns: A Journey Through the Unexpected. This is again a short story collection, and must say, amongst all the formats, short story writing is my favorite format, because I can stop anytime I want to. That's the beauty of a short story. So, Twisted Tales and Turns is a collection of 20 short stories. So, it's a multi genre format where every story has a twist at the end. So, the common thread binding all the stories of different genres is a plot twist. And the message that I tried to give through the book was life is unpredictable, things are not as they seem. So, as people, it's always good to reflect before taking our next step, because we never know what we may plan something, but what life may bring us. So, the book had paranormal stories, science fiction stories. There are stories of slice of life, but not romantic. So, it spoke about relationships and your association with your parents and friends without delving into the romantic part. Again, the book did well. It's into its second print run. Aside from the 3 fiction stories, earlier this year, I became a co-author of an international bestseller series called Cracking the Rich Code, a book endorsed by Tony Robbins, where my chapter in the book was about destiny by design. I firmly believe that destiny is not something that happens to you, it's something that you create. And I lay out my steps in that chapter on how do you set about creating your own destiny. I have also been fortunate enough to win awards and accolades for my short stories around the globe. And have been a part so far of 11 anthologies from all corners of the globe, including India, of course, but also European and US countries and USA. Outside the world of writing, I'm a personal empowerment life coach and executive coach. I coach senior leaders and professionals to get better at what they do. I'm a 2 time TEDx speaker. So, empowering people through words, that is what would I say is my forte, either through writing or speaking. That's about me, Sabin.
Thank you so much. All of you, it's so overwhelming, and I'm completely in awe with the work you've all done. So now coming coming to short story writing. So I'd love to know how you came about, all of you came about it. I love fiction in any form, but short stories is one thing. I am completely, it all started with, me reading Giri Maupassant, and apologies for the mispronunciation. But, short stories is something that I truly enjoy. So tell me, how did it all begin? And we'll start with Dipti.
Um, Short stories have always fascinated avid readers. So we would find books all over, strewn all over the house. And my mother, she's an educationist, and she told me, she says, if you understand a book, you pick it up and read. And she never stopped me from reading any book. And she had a vast, vast collection because my father would go and buy a lot of books all the time. And there was this one particular story, which is an absolute favorite of mine. It is called The Whole Town's Sleep.
It's a bit of
And
a
Ray Bradbury. Disturbance? Can you hear me now? Is it better? Better?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're good.
Yeah. So there was this story called the Whole Town's Sleeping by Ray Bradbury. And when I read that, I said, oh my God, in just a few pages, he has made my heart freeze. And I said, what is the power of the pen? I didn't want to be alone in a room when I read that story. So I said, my God, I think this is one genre that would really, really, that it was very, very close to my heart. As I said, I started writing short stories for Femina and Women's Era and all that. Those were the ages pre-internet, so everything was manuscript based. So you had to just send a story and you would wait eagerly for, either the accept or the reject. And those were, heartbreaking days when you would have rejects. But luckily, I did get a few accepts as well. So that is where my short story stint started. However, it was, I think, in 2016, after all those stories had been published and done away with, I wrote one story called Mirror Image. And this was for an anthology called 21 Tales to Tell. And till date, I think that is one of my finest short stories. It was called Mirror Image, and that was my very first thriller short story. And I moved on to Shadow in the Mirror, which is again by Readomania. This is not a short story collection, it is a standalone novel. And this is my latest book. It is called The Web of Shadows. The Web of Shadows. Now, this again is a standalone novel.
Covers you're all showing. I love the covers.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. But my short story collections came in between. The first one was called Where Shadows Follow, and the second one was called Shadows Never Lie, all four by Readomania. And these two were actually ebooks. So I don't really have them in my hand. That's why I thought I'd take my phone. I don't know whether you will be able to see it, but sorry. I'm a bit of a fossil when this goes. This is called Shadows Never Lie. This is a short story collection. Yeah. And of course, they're
available on Readomania, right?
They're all available on Amazon as well.
Amazon, okay.
Yes, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, of course, they're all there. And then this is the other one called, I'm sorry, I think I'll stop this. I'll just talk. It's easier just to talk. These were thriller short stories. And as Smita put it, these are all tales with a twist. Because I love that feeling of leaving the reader hanging in anticipation and then suddenly, shocking him or her. Because that is, you want to leave them with that, oh my God, how did that even happen? So that is how I think thriller short stories, after Shadow in the Mirror, when Dipanka said, would you like to write a few short stories? Because I had been writing for Readomania. We have a Readomania page where all of us have put in a lot of stories there. He said, why don't you compile all these, write a few more? And have a regular short story collection. And so that's what I did. Both these books have about 10 to 12 stories each, and they are all tales with a twist. And what I love about writing short stories is, you have to condense so much. You cannot just carry on and on and on as, when you write a novel. You have to put your thoughts in, and it's like doing Pressy writing in school. It's more difficult than it actually looks. Writing is like a vast ocean. But when you have to, pick out the rivers and, you put them together, you find that it's not that easy. And that is where I thought that the challenge lies. I said, let me write short stories. And the other short stories I've written, actually not my own, just compilations. They were both for children. One was the Panchatantra, and the other was classic tales from Shakespeare. Now, these are also short stories, but obviously not my own. I've only compiled them and tried to make them my own because the interpretations are different. The stories, the themes are the same, interpretations are different. And I just wanted to make these stories, available and reachable for young audiences. So short stories, I think, will always remain a passion with me. And I hope I can do many more shadow short stories. I hope Dipankar is listening.
Oh, I'm pretty sure he is. Mona, I'd love to hear your thoughts about how you came about, writing short stories, as well as other genres, as well as, please go ahead.
Yes, Sabin, since my first book, A Bridge to Nowhere, was a collection of 4 short stories, right? So the reason I chose short stories, as I just said earlier, that I followed O. Henry, Somerset Maugham, who were masters at short storytelling. So for me, or even Munshi Premchand, it's not as if they didn't write poetry or Cabbages and Kings, full novels as well. But the point is, they were the short stories that we studied in school. In the absence of a television in the house, in the absence of internet during that time, these were the stories that basically catapulted us into a magical world, another world altogether. So one was not heavily into novels, but these short stories. And since my first endeavor was a tryst with an experiment with myself, and as Smita also just said, that the first thing is that what you write for yourself. So it was basically experiment with writing. So I didn't want to delve into writing a novel and have egg on my face. कि इतना तो आता नहीं novel लिखने चले, right? So that was my first step. And those short stories, not that the book did hugely well, some such thing, but yes, the book did fairly well, and people reposed their faith in my writing. That was the best part. And the book was also released by Ruskin Bond, right, who's a master at short storytelling. So when he egged me on, when he motivated me, I knew that maybe this was a genre I could do, fairly good at. And then came God is a River, which was going to be a novel because I was writing about the partition. So this was the first book that we have here. It's not very much visible. I'm in my office and somebody's borrowed this book for reading. So this is A Bridge to Nowhere. You can see a bridge which is leading to no place together. So it had 4 stories over there. And this was the second one, God is a River. This was many incidents, many short stories, real stories of partition, the love between the two faiths that are put together and strung into a book. So you can see these earrings between lovers, a Hindu girl, a Hindu boy and a Muslim girl. You can see the filigree, which is, you will find, which has a very potent stay in Sufism. And the blue is the water. God is a river, right? This was a novel. The White Shadow and its second edition, Lost and Found in Banaras, were also novels. So here we are not talking about short stories, so I will not elaborate much on them. The Clown of White Fields over here then again had 7 short stories for children. Since this was my first writing for children, there was no way I was going to write a novel. I had done plenty of hard work with White Shadow and God is a River. So writing a short story in itself is also a bit of a shortcut for the writers themselves. You write something and you're done with 2,500, 3,000 words, and it's time to say finito. And of course, because this was for children, there's 7 short stories that there are. So you can see the cover over here. Half the cloud is here and half his face is here. His visage is here. The reason was they are again very twisted stories, but they were for children. Then these two, my latest book, the Devi Sutras, with 24 stories from the 18 Mahapuranas, and The Scent of Himalayas, which is 20 stories from the Himalayan belt, are again short stories. Considering that actually the Puranas have short stories, they don't have a whole lot of novels out there. And so do whatever the folklores or the legends that there are, which basically, an older person in the family is narrating to somebody younger, are also short stories. So there was no way that I could have violated that particular structure and gone into writing a novel. It was short stories. These two were the books with a cover designed by my son, You versus Yours. I know it is like, looking like Russian over there because of the lateral inversion, and Laughter Lines were also short stories. These were the ebooks that are released during COVID. Now, there was the advantage of writing short stories, as Deepti has put it very well. We can call it finito at any point that we want. Secondly, it is much easier for the author and challenging also at the same time. For example, what happens in a short stories, we do not have a huge margin where we can develop the characterization, because you have to finish the story in about 3,000 to 4,000 words max. You aren't developing much on the characterization, but you are focusing more on the plot, the twists and turns, the event, the conflicts at that. And whereas in what happens in a novel is that when you develop the character so well that people have this sensory tactile imagery when they're reading about the character, that they can actually visualize a face and and own that face and understand his emotions through his expressions. So it's easier. Whereas over here, we are working more on developing the plot, his conflicts, the events, and reaching multiple conclusions in our heads. And then thinking that, okay, the story is not going to read for more than 3,000 to 4,000 words. So how do I reach the end in such a way that this turns into a bomb of a capsule for the reader? But I always found writing short stories easier than writing a novel in still. I mean, maybe you would say that, what is she saying, because it is such a bipolar declaration that you have more leeway to develop the character when you're writing a novel, but yet she's saying that she finds it easier because I guess in my head I don't think characters as much as I think of the conflicts, and that is why short stories for me.
And I think those conflicts basically translate in, they tell you about the character as well. So,
Of course they do.
so in a way, yeah, so it's you are building, the characterization is done through the plot, through the different weird twists and turns, right?
Yes. And also through not only through the plot, also through the conflicts and the settings, also the characters develop. So if I'm telling you that the character is based out of Rome, you would start visualizing somebody who looks like a Roman, right?
Yeah.
If I say a character is based out of Banaras, suddenly in your mind, before I say something, you jump to the conclusion and you are already crafting the character. What does this person look like? How does it dress up? How does he talk? If he's sprouting somewhere from the ghats of Banaras, isn't it? So the setting also explains the character very well. And I guess writing short stories gives you that advantage that you develop the character from an oblique angle instead of telling people what the person actually looks like.
And you're also engaging your reader as well.
Of course.
in visualize, even if you're writing a novel, you're doing that, but there the characterization from an author's perspective is more, as
Yes.
opposed to uh, that written.
Yes. So giving that a room, that space to think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That space to think. Yeah.
Wonderful. Smita, I'd like to, tell us about how you came about this field.
So Sabina, I was telling you, sharing with the panel earlier, like how my creative endeavor started and how I was writing from a young age. So what happened somewhere around 2018, and that's the pre-pandemic era, I was like, thinking about, so I was working in the corporate world, doing a corporate job, and I was thinking whether this is all for me. Essentially, looking at new avenues, new opportunities, what more I can do as an individual to grow. And then, creative writing is something that came to mind. I was looking at my past and realized it's been a while I haven't written, but I was writing creatively at one point in time. And because I was out of touch with creative writing for so long, I enrolled in a couple of courses with Stanford University. One was about creative writing, the second was about how to write a novel in 30 days. So that was the era where like Zoom was fairly new. And here, sitting from India after doing my day job around 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. at the late night or early morning, whatever you call it, I was doing those sessions. But what happened is I got exposure to a lot of writers, both established and aspiring from all around the globe, get to know new techniques. And the West has a culture in education of learning by doing. So it's not that you have a lecture where they explain the concepts and then you do a homework assignment, unlike here in India. There it was like, okay, this is the concept, one line description, now you write something about it. So as part of that, I
Mhm.
was writing the first draft of the novel and writing some short stories from day one, which was subjected to peer feedback. So that is how somewhere in 2018 this sojourn with short stories started. And when I was getting feedback, I was refining them. So over a period of time, till the 2-3 months when I was doing that course, I actually got a quite a collection of short stories which was like reviewed, and I received encouraging comments. Then I started circulating those stories amongst my circle of close friends. And they came back and told me, we didn't know that you had such a creative streak, these were so well written, it is almost as if some seasoned author is writing them. So that is what encouraged me. And so I kept on writing on and off. It was in 2021 when I decided that okay, now I want to take this, I want to be a writer, I really want to take my expand my author repertoire and establish myself and start as an author and then eventually establish myself as an author. And that's when I realized one way for me to grow my craft is when I am consistent with writing. Because apart from those courses at Stanford, I was not really trained in writing. So it was like drilled onto us, the more you practice, the better you will get. So I am like, okay, I'll find some time and write something every day. If I'm writing for 365 days a year, I mean, it's against the laws of nature that I don't get better if I start writing. And when you're writing something every day, if you are writing fiction, I mean, it's logical that you will start writing short stories rather than a novel, because that is more daunting and all. And that is how it began. And then I realized, it's not necessary for me to get a feedback on my stories and call myself a writer. I essentially need to publish a book. The world has changed. There are so many literary platforms available. I can actually put my stories out there on the platform, see readers who are thinking, get to meet other writers, read their stories, learn more from them. So, Story Mirror was the first platform where I started to put out those stories that I was writing every day. Penmancy writing community was another one. And I was pretty much like because I was writing every day, what was happening, like every 4 to 5 days, I was having a story ready. And over the course of, so I started writing regularly in April 2021. By August 2021, it was like I had quite a collection, and I had feedback from readers in the platforms, and I knew which of my stories was working and which needed more improvement. And then I realized I had such a collection. Why not take a collection of my best stories and put it out there as a book and see how the larger audience reacts, regular readers, not people who are coming to platforms, but people who will pick a book and will find it and will evaluate whether the author is good enough to be called, to be a writer worth reading or not. And that is where this is my first book, A Slice of Life. Every person has a story. That is how this book was born. It was a very, like, you can see, this book is really thin, a collection of 18 short stories, but just about 100 page, and that was intentional because in my sphere hardly anyone read. So the endeavor was that people had short attention span, so those people will prefer reading short stories more than a novel. And for someone to sample a new author, it is much easier if you start with a short story, because a novel is investment in time which is much more than when you invest in short stories. So as a writer I was unknown, so why would somebody pick up my novel when they don't know me? But short stories, thin book, perhaps they will, and then they will decide whether to continue or not. And that is how it started. The book did very well, became an Amazon bestseller. I received an award from it, and that was when I took up that manuscript which I had written first time in Stanford. So I did finish a first draft in 30 days as part of that course, and then I picked it up, fine tuned it, took it to Readomania. There were a lot of back and forths, and then that is when my second book, A Price to Love, came out. You can see it here. So this was actually what I had written the first time. I wrote this before my short story collection, but I decided to publish it after my first book of short stories was published. And then, by last year, beginning of last year, 2023, I was pretty much like, even if I don't feel like writing, I was pretty much writing, because after writing continuously for that much period, you develop a muscle. And there are a lot of accolades, awards coming my way. And somewhere, I don't remember exactly where, somebody, actually we were having a debate, discussion around writing, and somebody was like insisting on the point that it is only, for a story to thrill, they have to be in thriller genres. And I, as a writer, had a different viewpoint. And I was like, no, I mean, of course, thrillers obviously thrill, but for a writer to thrill a reader, you have to be genre agnostic. It's not necessary you have to stick to a particular genre. So to challenge that
Absolutely.
viewpoint, I'm
Yeah.
happy to see you agree with me there, Sabin.
Yeah,
So to
yeah.
challenge that viewpoint, reinforce my viewpoint more, I had a reporter of stories. I picked up those stories which were not from a thriller genre, yet I thought they thrill the readers, not only basis my perception, but the feedback also that I had gotten from some of the platforms that I had written. And that is when Twisted Tales and Turns came out last year. I Those who have read all my three books tell me this is like the best of the three so far, which is also natural, because as you grow as a writer, you hope that the current work is always better than the previous work. And that is how it came out. Why I love writing short stories. Now, Deepti and Mona have already said that there are advantages. As a writer, you have a leeway. But apart from that, I have two main reasons of having short stories as my favorite format. Number one, by our very nature today in this digital world, we are all very short of attention span. Now, short stories, by their very nature, provide a concentrated burst of literary experience. They are these bite sized narratives that cater to the fast paced lifestyle of today's readers. So, I think this is my view that in a world which is filled with so many distractions, short stories are easily accessible and offer a quick escape without demanding a substantial time commitment, which matters a lot to today's generation. And second, I do believe that it is a format where you get to deliver very impactful narratives. You can start with one genre and then suddenly in the middle turn it into a different genre. You can have an open-ended, leave the reader hanging at the end. You can basically start with a particular character and in the middle have a different protagonist and turn the protagonist into an antagonist. I do feel that short story, and the length can vary, it can be as short as 100 words, can go up to 5,000 words, right? So they offer so much flexibility for a writer to experiment that it becomes more fulfilling for a reader. For a novel, okay, novel of course has their own advantages, and I love writing novels too. But for a reader, when he picks up a novel, he has an expectation, this genre, so the story will be this, the main characters will be this. You get a lot of time to develop. While in short stories, within a limited space, within a limited time, you have to keep readers as engaged. So I think as a writer, short stories bring out the best in all of us.
I absolutely agree with you, and agree with the point about being genre agnostic. We were talking yesterday with uh, Sunita Pant Bansal, and this exact thing came up about somebody saying, "Oh, you're doing this genre or you're doing this genre," and I think it was Archana Sarat, who said, when I went to the publisher said, uh, you know, thinking about the genre is not your job. Your job is to write.
Yes.
That's for the book, the bookshop and the publisher to decide which genre you're in. So don't worry about that. So, and I agree with, because this is like a creative process, right?
Yes.
So you're not too worried, you're going with the flow, you're writing, you're um, doing this creative process, which does not need to be shelved into or, demarcated into certain boundaries, right?
Yes, absolutely, Sabine. See, for us as writers, you should write a good story. That is what we should strive. I mean, I personally, for me, I'm a very spontaneous writer. I don't plan. I began something and then I let it take its course. So sometimes when I start writing, in fact, many times I don't even know what genre I am writing. And I just focus, okay, my job is to write a good story, which I should be satisfied in sharing with the world. Whatever genre it turns out, maybe it's a mix of genre, maybe it's one particular genre, maybe I don't even figure out what genre I can actually put it. But that's okay as long as the story strikes an emotional chord with the readers. I think as writers, we all agree that that is what matters the most to us.
Exactly,
Precisely.
exactly. So coming to short story writing in South Asia, especially by women, is there a specific thing? Because I was reading all these articles, and it's always there's always this narrative that it's about gender oppression, which is, of course, which yes, it is there. But what, in your opinion, are the basic, what do readers want to read, especially in South Asia? Dipti, I'll start with you.
I think readers, not only in South Asia, everywhere, they like to see that there is no oppression, there is no gender oppression. Basically, across, I mean, with patriarchy and everything in India and a lot of South Asian countries, you do find that women have always been, treated as a little below men. Now, luckily, it's a different story altogether. You see that women can do anything that men can do, sometimes even better. And as far as writing goes, when you look at literature, in the good old days, in the past centuries, women could not even write under their own names. You had people like George Eliot, and who she could not write because she could not write under her own name because people would not accept it. How far have we come? How far? I think we are living in a quite a miracle age now. Women can do anything. Women can write anything. Yes, there are pockets where they are still oppressed. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do for them except write and try and make their minds evolve, let their imaginations run riot. And for us, I think as writers, we need to make our women characters so strong that they stand alongside men. Men have always had natural advantages. Women have not. They do say women hold up half the sky. But then why does that not come down when you are actually living your lives? So, as writers, I think we expect a lot from our women, and we would like to see our women stride forward. And that is, it's this is not a South Asian thing. It is, I think, across the world, we would like to have, there should be gender equality. And that is one thing. And it's not that in your stories you're putting that across boldly. It has to come through. All these concepts have to come through your stories gently, and they have to stay with the reader after the story is done. There are so many other concepts as well. We are living in a world that is moving towards, we say it has progressed. It's a world that is filled with devices. Children, little children. I have my little grandson who's 4 and my little granddaughter who's 8. They love their devices. They are better than me. I go into a Zoom call and I say, oh my God, I hope I don't get stuck somewhere. And there they come and say, no, Mama, we will help you. Or my daughter comes and helps. Now we live in a very, almost a mechanical world. But we need to go back to that world of imagination, that world beyond all that. This used to be there in the past. The world where the grass was green. Today, you don't find the grass as green. In Dubai, you have flooding. You look at it and your heart breaks when you see how people are struggling there. The world has changed. So, are we moving towards a better world, or are we, moving towards a more progressive world? Is a progressive world better? I don't know. There are certain questions that stay in my mind, that maybe we were better off in the past, but then you would call me an old fogey. But I would like to again move on, because as an old fogey, nobody would read my books. And my primary aim is to make people fall in love with my books. So what do? I kind of straddle 2 generations or 3 generations, stay classic, and then be modern, and then try to find a way to straddle both worlds. It's a tightrope that we are all walking on. But we need to see that there are certain qualities that need to remain. Qualities like kindness, empathy, respect, love for one another. These are things which I am an educationist. We run a school in Kerala, and I feel that these are the most important things we need to teach children. It's not when you write, a writer needs to put all these things as well, so that when children read, they pick up all these qualities that make them better human beings. And finally, isn't that what is most important in the world? You have to be a good human being. Imagine a world of only good human beings. Wouldn't that be paradise? It would. I don't think we will ever get there. But as my daughter tells me, I wear rose colored spectacles. I see the good in people. I'm a little too over optimistic. But I love being that way, maybe. And that is what we need to do in our writing. Be optimistic, be positive, make people see the best in the world there is, because there is so much of good in the world. Let us not focus on the mundane and the unhappy. Of course, all that happens. We have to take it to heart. But when we write, let's try and make people happy, content, and become better versions of themselves. I think that is what we all look forward to in writing.
Absolutely. Mona, over to you. I wanted to ask. Yeah.
Yes, Sabin, that's a very, very interesting question that you have asked, and Deepti's answered it so well. There are 2 very peculiar things about Southeast Asia. One is that this land is a land that has been ravished by war and oppression, right? First. The second peculiar thing is that Southeast Asia, as a landform, as a demography, as a geography, has a history, has a history that goes centuries back. So these 2 factors have played very prominently into women's writing. So when you come across titles like My Heart is a Foreign Country, Not Without My Daughter, Somebody Give This Hand a Pen. So the title in itself explains where these women are coming from. So for a land which is ravaged by war and oppression, the first casualty is a family. And the woman in the family bears the brunt at many levels. The first level is that when the men go out to work, you are in a very uncertain position in your life, right? Second, because a woman is supposed to be a vessel of honor for a family, she is the first target in a war. Because if you target a woman's modesty, men all along have felt that they have won that particular section of the war because they've targeted a woman. It's the most convenient way to for them mentally in a very sickening way to feel that they have won because they've attacked somebody, a vessel of modesty or honor of a particular family. So women have written a lot about that. Then seeing their children orphaned again is another angle women have written about. Coming to the other part of it, the history, the lots of historical writings in Southeast Asia. Another thing that I have generally noticed in Southeast Asia is because the male proponents of law and religion featured very prominently in the society, women felt the need to defy the social mores. They felt the need to come out boldly. So we had people like Isma Chugtai in India, or even men like Premchand, who defied, who wrote, look at Binodini, right? A sand in the eye. Look at the character of Binodini, how he crafted that particular character, which was deeply sedimented into patriarchy. Just because she was a widow, she could not have any desires, and how Binodini defied everything. So these were the characters not only women were writing about, and so were men. Men who felt the need that this kind of system, this kind of patriarchy, which was sedimented into the system, should be attacked, should be dismantled. So people were writing like that. Secondly, I also felt that many women earlier were cagey about writing about their feelings, and that is why they were writing under pseudonyms or they were writing under a pen name. Because even other women, the privileged women in the society, never encouraged them. The privileged, the educated, the solvent women in the society who were very placed in their stature, in their family system, economically, socially, they were also not pleased with these kind of volatile writings by women who had a voice and who had found a voice to express. They were certainly uncomfortable. And that is why I guess it is in Southeast Asia that women have actually come into their own because they were not only against a devil called patriarchy or men alone, I would say, but also against women. So I guess that is why we had a multi-pronged, a multi-divergent writing coming from Southeast Asia.
Oh, that's absolutely true. Yeah. Smita, I'd love your take and your insight, especially with regards to what Deepti and Mona has said.
Yeah, sure,
Yes.
Sabin. Deepti, can you hear me now? I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yes. So, Deepti and Mona have observed, first and foremost, be it South Asia, be it any geography, like I've been fortunate to interact with writers all around the globe and readers. So, the first thing anyone will prefer is that the story is something that resonates with them. Okay, it does not matter whatever is the theme, whatever is the social background behind that, whatever is the genre. If the story does not resonate, It may be, from the most hot selling genre of that era, but if it does not strike a chord, readers will not give it that value, be it South Asia, be it any geography. Now, particularly coming to South Asia, as Mona said, this is a land which is very rich in cultural heritage, societal norms, and these are the two things that South Asian readers prefer to read more about. When it comes to fiction, stories that reflect this in an entertaining manner is something that will always draw readers. And lately, especially since the last 2 decades, contemporary issues have come to the fore, have really come a lot to the fore. Today's readers, in fact, today's youth are very well educated, they are aware, and they like to keep themselves abreast. So, stories that throw light or that address social issues such as poverty, caste discrimination, gender inequality, political unrest, which is happening a lot even in today's times as we speak, they resonate with readers all around. Any stories that offer insight into the lived experiences of people from South Asian backgrounds is something that is bound to resonate well. So when I talk about social realism, look at The Untouchable by Mulk Raj Anand. Okay, even today this book has fans. The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy, literary fiction, very a very interesting commentary on the social equations prevailing at this point in time. When it comes to our history, or rather mythology, the folk tales and mythology is a genre that continues to do well. So traditional folk tales, myths, legends, they are always popular. Add to that something around supernatural elements, colorful characters, something around moral lessons. Families like to read it along with their children. So the Panchatantra by Vishnu Sharma is still evergreen. Our children too still read it, don't they? And nothing can ever beat the popularity of Ramayana. No novel, no other book. That is the power of folk tales and mythology. Uh, Plus, compared to the Western world, we in South Asia are someone who are from whom family dynamics matter a lot more. Like if I look at Western geographies, the culture is that after a certain age, children leave their homes and are supposed to have their own lives. But that is not so much so the case in South Asia. So, stories centered around family relationships, generational conflicts, and cultural traditions where, despite the challenges, the family come together and play a central role in society, they are highly relatable to readers in South Asia. The evergreen romance and relationships. So, any story or novel that explore themes of love, marriage, complex interpersonal relationships, having elements of both tradition with modern sensibilities, that is something that will always be well received by readers in South Asia. And last but not the least, humor and satire. Stories that offer humor, wit, will always be popular among readers because we all seek entertainment. And if it is served in a light-hearted manner, nothing like it. So, satirical takes on politics, society, and everyday life often resonate with readers. So, The White Tiger by Arvind Adiga, or look at The Inscrutable Americans by Anurag Mathur, something that resonate very well, and so well that in fact movies or shows have been made out of them. So this is what comment on the contemporary times, something that resonate with the rich cultural heritage and tradition that this geography has. Stories that reflect that are bound to resonate, specifically, especially with South Asian readers.
Thank you so much for that insightful comment. But I'm afraid we're at the end of our this engaging session. Thank you so much, Dipti, Mona, and Smita, for a wonderful conversation. And you've literally, each year I do this and I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and write. But this time around, I'm thinking of taking a back seat and focusing more on writing, short story writing, because I absolutely agree with you. I think, short stories, that's the genre. I just feel that that's for me, even coming from a journalistic background where you're writing, news stories and, shorter versions, not longer versions. 60,000 words is like too daunting. But all of you have literally inspired me to, do something about that. So thank you so much for an
Go,
inspiring.
Sabin, go. You can do it.
Yes, absolutely. We'll wait for this, Sabin.
Fingers
We're
crossed.
not letting you. We're not letting you go. We're going to wait for this. Wait for your book on
All
short
right.
stories.
All right.
Thank you
And
so
we
much.
Take
and we are
care.
going to
Bye-bye.
take turns now. Maybe one day House of Harmony is going to grill you the way you were grilling us at Ananke.
Yes, absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
No,
And
thank you.
thank you so much, Sabine, for having me here. And it's been lovely and lovely being with the Mona and Smita as well. I've had a whale of a time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Same
much,
here.
Sabine.
Thank you,
And
Sabin.
it is gone.
No, no. I was just wrapping up. It was such a wonderful session. I didn't even realize that, we have been speaking for
Yeah.
so long till
Oh,
Sabine
thank
Yes.
you.
reminded us, okay, we're
Yes.
coming to the end of time. So this is the second time. I hope, Sabine, you are going to have me the next time also,
Of
because I have
course, of
always
course.
enjoyed myself here.
Me
Absolutely,
too. Me too.
absolutely.
Me too. Me too. Me too. Me too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said before, you're part of the Ananke family. So we cannot do without you, all of you. So,
Thank
Thank
you
and
you
we
so
for
do.
having me,
much.
Sabine. And it was such a wonderful panel where with every dialogue, I learned so much from both Deepti and Smita. Thank you very much
That
for
cuts both
because
ways. That cuts both
multi-pronged
ways.
voice. Yeah. Thank you.
Lovely, lovely conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.